I think we can safely say we have the most diverse panel. Definitely something we don't see on television channels, definitely not in the newsrooms. That in itself, I think, is a story and a message. But this is a post-lunch session. I think since podcasts are the kind of flavor of the season, we'll keep this, casual, conversational, and I would encourage all of you to also jump in and ask questions when you guys have. We've decided to turn the spotlight on media, and rightly so, and look at how narratives are viewed, right? Depending on where it comes from, who it comes from, and the problem, the elephant in the room, Delhi, right? The perspectives from Delhi, stories from Delhi, and how reporters from other states, smaller towns, the kind of struggle and the kind of sacrifices that one has to make it big in the so-called national scene. I want to start with you, Sagar. I did not see that coming. So, let's start with why did you want to move to Delhi? Why did you want to work out of Delhi? And how was that journey?
I wanted to move to Delhi exactly for the same reason. Like, to be a Delhi reporter, to be a Delhi journalist is to be face. You will be respected more. You will be paid more, maybe. Back then, I thought, and you get to do big stories like national leaders, legislators, Vidhan Sabha, Sansad, all those things. So because I didn't start from Delhi, when my classmates who I studied in a journalism school very near from here, Manipal, and most of them joined television channel. They began their career from Delhi. And Delhi was considered as Mecca of journalism because you get fame, name, become, your family can identify that, okay, what journalist. I mean, I come from a place where journalist is about holding a mic and interviewing people to be on the TV. My mom still and my father still has complained that I'm still not on TV. So I also wanted to have all of that. When I came out from school, college in 2010. And it took me like 6 years working in small places like Vizag, Bhubaneswar, even in Bihar Sharif for a while, where I come from. It's a district in Nalanda. And then after 6 years, there was a vacancy and I applied. So there was no... it was all those glamour and fashion. But once I had already worked in these places, once I'm here, like it's been 8 years since I joined Caravan and I have been a Delhi reporter or a national reporter, I realized that probably I could help people much more when I was a community reporter in Hyderabad, like going door to door, asking people whether your garbage has been cleaned, whether your tap has been fixed, than now when I write Mr. Doval involved in Rafale, and probably nothing happens. It sets an agenda, for a while. People talk about it. Opposition leader took it up. But in people's life, it didn't really make a big change. It was a normal, there was no deliberate thing. But I wanted to come to Delhi. When I read Caravan back in Bhubaneswar, I felt like, oh, these are big reporters. They break stories, they make news all over India, and I wanted to be one of them. I kept trying, and with actually organizer of this event, Vinod Jose hired me. So thank you.
Daljit, another problem is that of perspective, right? Even if they cover a story from Punjab, are the perspectives, narratives accurate? And who usually dictates that narrative? How much feedback is taken from the reporter on ground?
Yeah, it depends. If you are in Delhi, then the issues are different. If you are in Chandigarh, then the issues are different. So issues remain there. Whether you are reporting the actuality from the ground accurately or not. See, when it comes to Punjab, there are different issues which are easy to be off radar when you are Delhi. For example, the diversity of Punjab. If you see turbaned people, you just simply assume that all of them are Sikhs. Whereas there may be Sikhs who don't wear turbans, and there will be others who wear turbans, non-Sikhs. So that's one. And then when it comes to Punjabi community, the Punjabi community is across the border. It's on the other side of the border, which is Pakistan. Then it is within India, whether it is Haryana or it is Himachal, there are people who speak Punjabi. As I was working with BBC, so we had language services. So it was quite difficult to make people understand that people in Lahore speak Punjabi. So same way, it was the case with others as well. So it depends where are you working. So the issues are complex and they are there. As far as the personal experience is concerned, so when I came to, first I started working as a documentary filmmaker, independent documentary filmmaker. So I survived for 8 years. Thereafter, I joined the mainstream. I was working with Tribune. Tribune is the most important and the oldest newspaper in Punjab. So they publish in Punjabi, Hindi and English. So English is the largest circulating newspaper. And then they have a Punjabi. I was working with Punjabi section in editorial. So I used to write editorials. And very often there used to be difference between the editorial position in English and then in Punjabi as well. So as it was quite difficult for the Chandigarh reporter to make distinction between different farmers organizations and different labor organizations. And when it comes to labor organizations, it was quite difficult to make distinction between industrial labor and the farm workers. So those issues were very there. As the reporting and most of the reporters are Chandigarh centric, which is a capital of a state, then union territory, a very pampered kind of space. So you get a lot of funds as UT, as a capital of 2 different states. And then a lot of bureaucracy and politicians settled over there. So you will find anytime 5-6 MPs settled over there, whereas the UT, the geography represents just one parliamentary constituency. So that way it is very pampered kind of space. So when farmers or somebody else from, whether from Haryana or Punjab comes to that place, they feel some aliens are coming. So that kind of disconnect was already there. And when it comes to Delhi, so I started working in Delhi in BBC Punjabi. So there was no Punjabi news from Delhi before that. Although there are certain Punjabi channels which have their head offices in Delhi as well, but primarily their operation is confined to Punjab. At that time, I could see that there is a serious disconnect between the state, and it may be with the rest of the states as well, but I can talk about Punjab. So I can give you an example. So if something is happening at the border and you raise the simple question, one thing I want to make clear is that throughout my journalistic career, I have never done any exclusive or investigative story. Never ever. So all my journalism is about the public information only. So for my crisis comes from stating the obvious, not finding something which is just available to me, which is just under the carpet. So I can give you an example. The Kartarpur corridor story, all of us know that it was an international event. And in Indian media, there was a news item that so-and-so Khalistani is seen with the head of Pakistani army. So it was everywhere, right from Arnab to anybody was talking about that it is so-and-so, so-so. And next day in the editorial meeting, it was discussed that we need to pursue this story. My simple question was, what is the story? So there is a person who is a Pakistani citizen. And the response was, he is Gopal Singh Chawla. I said, yes, a Sikh can be a Pakistani citizen and a born citizen. And what's wrong in being a citizen with the head of the army of some state? What's wrong? And second, they are the hosts. It is the Gurdwara Management Committee, which is hosting that event. Whether you are part of any Indian delegation or you are Imran Khan or Indian Army, Pakistani Army Chief. Gopal Singh Chawla is the host. What's wrong in being with the host? So it was a difficult story for BBC to publish. So these kind of issues are there. Yeah.
I think also, though I'm not from a small town, for a lot of people, all of South is one group of small towns. And it's ironic that we're speaking here in Wayanad because a few years ago, I don't know how many of you remember, there was, I think 2019 when Rahul Gandhi was campaigning and IUML had their flags out. Most of the so-called star anchors did not know that this is the IUML flag, and they went to town calling it the Pakistan flag, saying that Rahul Gandhi and supporters are using the Pakistan flag. It requires 2 seconds of Google search, which is something most people don't do. And it took a lot of courage for local reporters to talk to their editors and say, hey, you got this wrong, because by then they'd run it for 3 hours and they are not in the habit of admitting they're wrong, right? That brings me to how difficult is it, Neha, to make your own editors understand? Making your audience understand is a completely different ballgame. Your first struggle, the colleagues, right? Your people in other bureaus, people, your input or your editors. How difficult is it to convey the nuances and still make sure that your story is carried?
It is complicated because. Thank you for that question, because there is a very regimented way of thinking about issues, right? So I remember, like, I was in Patna in 2019, and I'd gone to several parts of Bihar looking at midday meal cooks, and this was just before the elections. So one found out that the midday meal cooks basically get 35 rupees every day to cook for 200 children. And the money and the payment the honorarium has been pending for a while, and I was trying to report before elections on this. So when I called up my Delhi editor and I said, okay, I've traveled and this is, so they said, oh, this is okay, but what about Pulwama? So the question about Pulwama and how people sitting in Delhi think election is getting, how election votes are being framed, how elections are going to be won, is because how they are thinking what is happening in Pulwama, and not because what the women on the ground are getting paid. But basically, elections over and over, we have seen that these are the things, particularly the women voters, are deciding, okay, what is it that I am getting? And that is changing the game in elections. So that is something very important, I feel. And also the other bit about, I want to say one thing, which is I'm very glad to say that with internet, because internet has democratized news in many, many ways. And that is why we've said things like 2024 was a YouTube election because people were relying more on this. I was in Azamgarh reporting in a rural area, and an older person called me and said, are you a YouTuber? So I said, no, I'm a journalist. And they said, then I will not talk to you. So which is excellent, because the mainstream media set in Delhi, close to the power corridors, all of that is going from their hands. And more research tells us, particularly in a country like India, which has a younger population and the number of neoliterates is going up, the newer people who are reading and watching want to watch and see news in their own language. So that's also great, because all these power centers in English, Delhi, all of that is breaking away. So that's the good thing that I see. So very soon it will not matter what editors back in Delhi are thinking about how elections are going to be won. So.
But even in English, I just want to add that there have been so many times that we used to be called when I was based in Bangalore, and they'd say, can you quickly get Kerala Chief Minister's bite on something that's happened in Andhra? And in their mind, they should all react. come and react. Or they'd say, hey, can you get, listen, 3-4 reactions, one from Mammootty, Mohanlal, Rajnikant, Kamal Hassan, and a couple of... So then I had to actually tell them, okay, I'll do that once you're done getting Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan, Amitabh Bachchan. Because you have to kind of help them understand how big somebody is, or it's lost on them. What can rectify these things? Do you think diversity in newsrooms can help? We speak a lot about it, but you need a certain level of autonomy, right, Sagar? Even if there is diversity, if those voices are not given any sense of autonomy, eventually what is being churned out will all look similar, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. You said like it becomes very difficult to convince your editor about certain stories because there's a uniformity of thinking within the news organization. It may not have to do always with oppressed communities, but also in general, if there is a news from, I mean, we will come to that how maybe diversity can fix this, but I think if we try to understand this, there's one problem that there's a lot of uniformity in terms of their social background within in a news organization when we have people who takes decision, editors, and they come from almost similar culture, similar caste, similar class, and they have certain ideas of certain things. So it becomes really difficult for them to conceive, let's say a story. I was in Odisha and I was a crime reporter, and there was this Adivasi girl who was sitting on protest because her warden has slapped her, telling that you don't belong here and you guys just come because of reservation. And when I try to pitch this story in the way from the girl's perspective, from an Adivasi's perspective, editor's response would be, but what is the police saying? So the standard SOP within news organization is that whatever the authorities tells you is considered the authentic information. Everything else are hearsay or just allegations. So when you have that kind of understanding, you can never bring out either violence against Adivasis or Dalits or even women. You remember 2015 was a time when Supreme Court gave a judgment, like before doing arrest in 498A. 498 is a IPC which protects women against their domestic violence. It's safeguard against their in-laws, against their husbands. So, but Supreme Court was like, this laws is, in one case, they said there shall not be immediate arrest of the whole family, but there are 10 guidelines which should be followed. It never said there shall never be any arrest in any domestic abuse. But how it translated in a police station is that there shall not be any arrest at all. Because I used to cover women police station. Every city has Mahila Thana. Maybe yours will also have. It's a constitutional law to protect women. But from the time that decision came, the police officers, because I was a crime reporter, it was my regular job to sit with them to visit Thana's stations, and I would see actions won't be taken. The cops will simply say that it's a Supreme Court guideline, we won't do any arrest. We do the general, taking the statement, just procedural work. There's no actual action. So, yeah, and you can't help it. As a journalist, you go back to editor, then they will say that let's have the police version. Simple thing, like in Adivasis, in Odisha, there are always many encounters, and what you see in newspaper is Maoists were killed in crossfire. But it's to being Maoist, to be a member of Maoist is something for court to decide. You can't call somebody Maoist as a journalist, and you have never visited. City reporters don't get to visit forest when people are killed. So I had written once that 5 people whom police calls Maoist were killed. My editor had a problem that, is this the kind of thinking you have? And I was like, there's nothing wrong. I mean, I'm saying they're Maoist, but police saying they're Maoist. I'm not saying they're Maoist. So, yeah, that happens because first thing, you may have bias because you come from a very different background and you have some kind of prejudices against Adivasis or Dalits. You think that reservation is bad, and other kinds of things, whatever privileges they say Constitution gives them. That's one thing. Second, also because we don't have documentation of our violence of our communities, which if we try to follow a very even though editors are not biased, but as a reporter, as a journalist, you need to show them fact check, you need to show them, convince them through facts that whatever I'm saying, let's say there was this story where Yadavs had attacked Dalits and basically Musas, who are agricultural laborers, and agricultural laborers have no documentation of land ownership, but their ancestors work for always in their landlord's field. But when you take this story, as in you write that they are saying it's their land and the aggressors were Yadavs or the state police, you probably won't be able to establish it because there is no land records, and that puts you in a very difficult situation, even if the editor wants, and you have within a news organization, you have a SOP that you have to hyperlink everything, or you have to show original whatever documents are there to corroborate your statements. You can't just go with whatever people are saying. But even though I come from that place, I know the local person, you are a reporter, you are a medium, you cannot say I know them. And you also cannot show, because this country never documented history of our social history, or people who are not privileged or not in the administration. So yeah, I'm sorry if I diverted or something. Yeah.
Another issue is about Delhi reporters paratrooping when something big happens, a big event happens. They probably come to you for sources, numbers, perspective, context, research, everything. They take your material, sometimes put out a more mangled version of it, but if they do a good job, also the credit is theirs. And you remain an unnamed source who just contributed to it. How difficult are those situations to deal with? And share some personal experiences, perhaps, that something like this has happened with you?
Yeah, I think this is a big phenomenon. So it is happening with all the people who are in the periphery, who are at distance from the centers, big centers, whether you are away from Delhi or you are away from Chandigarh. So it's happening with people. So most of the time, the big journalists will land over there and they will write stories. And I can give you an example of agrarian crisis in Punjab. So it took years and years for reporters from Bathinda, Barnala, Mansa, Sirsa and so on to report agrarian crisis and make it part of the agenda for the state, for the academic institutions. I know that how people were writing small stories like that, why people are selling the dry fodder they have stored for their livestock. So your livestock is going to go hungry if you are selling it in an off season. And then what kind of tractors are coming to the market for resale, the second-hand tractors. And then what is happening to the buffaloes. And so many. So how many people have constructed houses, but they are unable to plaster them, to give them color. How many people are unable to get the necessary repair done to their houses, and so on. So there were reports and reports and reports after that. So once the suicide got reported, all of a sudden the agenda became big. And the story became flat. It's totally flat story. If the agrarian crisis is just coming out of the suicide, it means that all the people who have not committed suicide are not in crisis. Whereas the difficult situation is to make the decision. So, and it can be with reference of Punjab is a border state. So whenever something is happening at the border, so you find a reporter all the way from Mumbai to New York to London to Delhi dropping over there. And the people who report border regularly, they can make distinction between the defense line, the border line and the international border. Whenever it is reported in the national media, it is simple international border, as there is just a single barbed wire fencing. It's a layer of things. So there is defense line, then barbed wire fencing, then international border, and then there is something called no man land. as well. And the kind of regular, everyday crisis which comes out of the presence of paramilitary forces, police over there, and the kind of restrictions they have imposed on the people who have their farmland across the barbed wire fence. For example, there is a list of items that paramilitary forces can search if you have to cross the border, which includes the tube of your tractor as well, the axle of your trolley as well. It means your tractor can be dismantled like anything. It can be converted into, say, 1050 pieces if they just want to implement what is written over the board. So most of the time you see that kind of things. Yeah.
You have the challenge of being a woman, right? That's an additional layer. How has that made your conversation more complicated?
Yeah, this question is very important. You were talking about, Sagar, you were talking about journalism. When I wanted to do journalism and basically wanted to come to Delhi and study, my family, everybody said, oh, this good girls from good families obviously don't do this, and this is obviously stenography, journalism and stenography. And one chacha from Gorakhpur called up my father to say that very bad girls do it. Women go there, they drink, they smoke, they drink, and they get pregnant. So that was the story. But initially, I was just out of college and I started working. So obviously, my new radical ideas of feminism. It was complicated for me because I remember going and interviewing a Khap Panchayat leader, and Khap Panchayats are these clan councils, and this is in 2007. They were regularly issuing diktats of honor killings for people who were choosing their own partners. So once one Khap leader told me that, oh, if you were a woman from our community and roaming around with a male camera person like this, we would have also hung you from some tree or something. And I started arguing with him. And this was in Haryana, where after convincing my editor to be sent to Haryana to do the story, I started arguing with this Khap leader, and then he said, I will not give you the interview. So obviously I came back without a story and got big jhar from my editors, and I realized, okay, this is not working. But then what has worked for me, which I now tell everyone and it has dutifully follow, is that everybody loves to mansplain, and they obviously think that I am this woman with no brains, so I act like one. So I go to the police officer and say, sir, how did this happen? I didn't understand. And they say, you didn't sit. I'll show it to you. And the same with a lot of all kinds of fundamentalists across the section and all kinds of political leaders. Sir, I don't know, I didn't understand. And basically, so I use it now, and so most of the time the other weapon is I just put one dupatta like this, so it's like sealed, so I get the story. That's how I do it.
That's so true. When I started reporting in coastal Karnataka, I had many of these groups tell me, but you have a Hindu sounding name, what is wrong with you? You should be on our side. And as a young reporter, I used to waste my energy in trying to explain to them. But I learned that, great, let's use that to my advantage. And now many of them are my sources. They call and give me exclusives. And I don't even have to lie. They know where I work, they know what I do with it. But somehow in their head, they find it difficult to wrap that she can be dangerous as a journalist because they think we're not competent as professionals, right? So
add one more thing which has helped me actually is that with this, because in a lot of smaller places and villages, when you're going and reporting, you obviously end up staying back in the village and you're inadvertently staying back at someone's house. So initially I used to get very irritated. For example, there were Muzaffarnagar riots and I was traveling with some people, so I was obviously sent inside and I was inside the house, and all the male reporters would sit outside and talk about, oh, this happened, that happened. And that used to really irritate me to the point then I realized that actually I'm getting a lot of information from the women inside and the men do not have access to that. Which fixed something for me fundamentally is the fact that the problem of not having women as news sources in the media. Because a lot of reports that we see across Asia Pacific, we see that women as news sources, basically women, people who speak and tell us about what is happening, only 19% of those sources are women, and most of the time they're talking about their personal experience. But for me, it helped me because then I had access. So if I'm doing a story on police encounters, I'm not going and only speaking to the male cop and the male relative of the person who has been killed and all the men. I'm talking to the women because actually once somebody has been killed in a police encounter, it's the women in the family who now suddenly are the primary breadwinners. They are the ones who have to chase the police. If there's a false arrest in a false case in a National Security Act or any other thing, it's the women who are actually constantly chasing up with the police and the lawyers, so they end up giving more information. So for me, fundamentally, as a practice, I'm very happy that now I can use women as news sources and not just men here.
But speaking of narratives, one grouse I have, and my latest pet peeve are these exit polls, right? And time and again they get it wrong, but they still invest a lot of money.
Instead of actually probably using that money to do good reportage from ground, they invest it in these exit polls.
But if you look at what they do, they talk about, let's say in Karnataka, Lingayats and Vokkaligas, how did they vote? Like they're one homogeneous group. In the Telugu states, for example, they'll say, okay, they'll just talk about Kapus and Kammas and what have you.
The fact that the narratives are coming from the same kind of people, how much is that a problem in your mind? And is that changing? Who sets the narrative? Is that changing? Is it still the editor telling the reporter what stories to pick, or do reporters now have more and more of a voice and a say in the narrative, the larger narrative?
Yeah, it's a big problem. The way I like to understand phenomena, let's say phenomena, whatever the story is, because then the actual story, which reporters wants to say, doesn't get conveyed in. Maybe I can slip it into the kind of discussion, but I hope Kevin is here. uh, I just want to show how this set understanding of an incident affects when you try to bring out a story. Last year, I did a cover on Ayodhya Ram Temple, and I went there. I stayed there for 2-3 months, and there was no mandate. Just try to understand how the trust has been growing. They're buying their lands, and there was allegations that they are involved in corruption in their transaction of lands. So, yeah, through during the investigation, um, what struck me was that all the arguments that they had made, the trust or the Hindu party that we say, um, to get the judgment in favor of the temple, is that broadly that they won the place where Babri stood is because Hindu believed this was a very old place for them to worship. It was never proved. It is where the god was born. But because Hindus believed so, it was given to them. Another argument was that we can move our deities, but we cannot move sanctum sanctorium, which is Garbhagriha. So these were basic broad arguments based on which way. But when the original dispute was on 1500 square yard, but the temple was made almost in 3 square kilometer, and that was the only mosque at the place where the dispute existed. But in the process of making this big temple, they demolished almost a dozen. At least in my knowledge, there were at least a dozen ancient temples. There was no doubt there was an ancient place there. There were ancient actual temples, not, temple in somebody's imagination that existed. But there were around that area, mosque, there were at least a dozen temples, which belonged to different characters, or let's say gods of Ramayana, Kaikai, Sita, all these
gods. So Ram is as important as Kake, but they demolished all these places to build their Ram temple. Now those people who used to manage these other temples, ancient temples, they went to court and they made the same argument that how can we move our Garbhagriha and how can and the trust said that you can move because you have been closed for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show the hypocrisy of the trust in all these matters. On one side, they build a huge temple in the name of the most ancient god of our country. On the other hand, they in the process they demolished actual temples that was similarly gods. But when I wrote this and it went through the editorial process, the understanding was very much through a lens of political lens, how Modi took advantage of, which he did, which all of it is true. But that's one way of understanding the Ram temple issue, that it got them political success, it got them political control over people, and now we are very polarized. And editors wanted to get the story out through that lens only. But yeah, and the Hindu-Muslim binary, which was so it was very difficult situation for me to also conquer with their idea and tell my own story. So this is one problem when you have this agenda thing. I mean, agenda is good. I want my stories to set narrative, set agenda, because my understanding, academic, I think, definition of agenda is that news media play a role in forming public opinion and political outcome because of that change in public opinion. Every journalist wants their story to make, to influence public opinion, and as the change in that, as a result of that change in public opinion, government should change their policy, which we all want. And as a journalist, I would like to have that agenda, but that agenda shall have depth, that shall have base, and that comes only when you, when you are open to ideas which is very localized, which you should trust your reporters, you should trust their understanding rather than putting your own thinking and the way you look at the whole thing. And if for you also it's a bad thing, but the way you want to look at it, the lens that you are using is not working for your reporter, or not working for your reporter is in touch with people, or let's say not working for people. My people said, or people I met said a different thing, but you want to put it in a different mold. So that, yeah, that's a biggest challenge, and that affects final outcome because people's voice are said in a different way. But it's a constant struggle between reporters and editors, and we can't go out of the whole system and publish on a blog, or because that's also a bad thing. It has to be done through fact check and editorial. Yeah. So. Yeah.
And also, I think the problem that you work backwards, right? You have an agenda, and the reporter is sent out to kind of do reporting around that, so it substantiates. I'm not saying caravan. I'm just saying it is a problem. But on the topic of binary, you were talking about how they're not looking at things holistically. If there are perils of the Hindutva movement, that does not automatically mean that those opposing Hindutva are all not dangerous, and we should not take a critical look at it. You were talking about how Khalistan is not looked at critically enough by a section of media, and that also could be dangerous. Right?
See, that's generally the case when the national media report about Punjab. So the diversity is not acknowledged. The diversity in terms of the kind of religious practices, spiritual practices are over there, and then the diversity of political opinion about different issues. For example, the Kisan movement, it was something really big. And I'll give you two different kind of examples. So one example is that when the reporters started reporting that these are Khalistanis, so they're definitely there. So all the time you will find that if you go to any place, you will find minor voices, nuisance, and then considered voices, and so you will find diversity of voices. So that voice is definitely there. I'm not saying that it's not there. But when they paint all the organizations, the whole diversity with the same brush, that's a real issue. And in this case, in the case of Kisan Morcha, there were around 3 dozen organizations from Punjab only. And most of the organizations had opposed Khalistani movement. And the leaders were killed, the cadre was killed, and they went through a really difficult phase. So there were splits in the organization just because of the Khalistani movement, that one of the person is supporting the Khalistani movement, so there is split. So if you just remove that, erase that kind of history, and then report, then it is quite a difficult thing. So I think that's one of the things. And the other, the exactly opposite example is that once the journalists start reporting a news, particularly in the mainstream media, which gets you views, likes, shares, and all kind of algorithm variables, they start reporting in the same fashion. So Shromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee is this is main organization, main institution from Punjab, which manages all the historical Gurdwaras. So it's a big organization. They have a budget of more than 1,000 crore rupees per annum and so on. So they organize big religious events. So they issued a press note and they stated that as the present government has passed these form laws, so they are not going to invite the Prime Minister for the function. And that came to our newsroom as well. And the reporters decided not to pick this news.
Good.
I went and I asked them, what's wrong with this? Why have we not published this news? And their response was, so what? It's Modi who is not invited. See, it is the Kisan movement which is trivializing a person or a position or a government. But that's not journalism. Whether you like him or not, the person is Prime Minister. And a big institution has decided against their own history not to invite a person who happens to be at a position. So you are going to invite the Prime Minister, whosoever the Prime Minister is. So whether you like it or you don't like it, whether you support it or you don't support it, it is report worthy. So I think this is something we need to take stock of. Yeah.
And we'll open up for questions after this question. So working with the backing of a large organization, legacy media or otherwise, also comes with its own complications, but at the same time, it gives you a safety net, right? Your legal, if the story is, it goes through all the legal vetting, then they will back you. You have also been an independent journalist. This double-edged sword that it is, right? You will get independence if you work by yourself, but you don't have backing. How do you deal with that issue?
See, let me just say, I am privileged also because I write in English and I live in Delhi. I have 3 cases and it's been 8 years, but let's put that aside for a bit. Let's just say, we spoke about the corporate political nexus when we were doing the introduction. We have to address what is the new revenue model of mainstream media. And if you see that most of the legacy news organizations used to have bureaus in every state. And now as part of the new revenue model, they have shut down bureaus as a cost-cutting measure because it's easier to outsource that work to journalists and to reporters and make them do that reporting for a pittance. So you will see that a lot of places, local journalists are reporting for something like 800 rupees per story, 1200 rupees per story. And so there comes the question, which is, will you be able to sustain yourself on that? So they're not obviously, so obviously you're doing other things. One example is the case of Pawan Jaiswal in a place called Mirzapur in UP. And Pawan Jaiswal had done a story on how in the midday meal program, students are being given roti and salt instead of a proper meal. And for that story, the Yogi government filed a case of criminal conspiracy against him. Now, Pawan Jaiswal, because he was a freelancer, he also used to run a grocery shop. And so the state government said, oh, obviously there is some thing here and you're not a journalist. So you are not, there's some ulterior motive that you've done this story. And this case went on, and Pawan Jaiswal obviously did not have the backing of the place that published the story. And he was also unwell, and he recently passed away. And this is not one story. I'll tell you, when COVID happened in 2020, in the first 3 months, there were 55 cases, criminal cases filed against journalists across the country in smaller cities and towns. And the reports that they had done were mostly lack of PPE kits, lack of oxygen cylinders. And the kind of cases that were filed against them were Epidemics, Diseases Act or Disaster Management Act. And so, and another case I'll tell you, in Jharkhand, for example, Rupesh Kumar Singh, a journalist who's been in jail for the last 1.5 years, he has 3 UAPA cases against him. And his family, again, because he was a freelancer, he does not have any support. His wife used to teach in a school. Because of the stigma, she was thrown out. The son was thrown out of the school. And these are the consequences, because you do not have any kind of backing, and also because you cannot survive in this system where you're getting 1,000 rupee, 2,000 rupee for a story. You will have to do something else. So the larger, profound questions of ethic and dilemma, and what is paid news and what is lines are being blurred, is something that also needs to be seriously discussed by people who care about democracy or press freedom. Because if you do not fix this revenue model, then obviously everything, there'll be boundaries will be blurred, and you are not going to get whatever needs to come out. Another example is during COVID, you saw lots of pictures and visuals of migrant workers walking back home. But we never were able to find out what happened to those workers once they reached home, because the people who were bringing those photos and visuals were people who had the resources to get a taxi to go to all these places and take those visuals. But the people in smaller places used public transport, which was not accessible during COVID, and which is why we did not see this. So the hierarchy of resources and the corporate political nexus, the mainstream media model, where the focus is to make more and more money and not give enough resources, or the fact that, one more thing I'll add is, during COVID you saw that there were 5,000 layoffs in Indian media in the first 3 months, even by the companies that were making profit in every quarter. And so these are, if we do not address these questions, all these other questions, we will not be able to have a solid solution around this. Yeah.
Just to add to that, I think last month India Today group laid off 50-60 reporters in each of the bureaus. Why did they have so many? Because they had these regional YouTube channels which were supposedly doing very well. The month before, they were all given performance awards, and the next month they were all laid off. And that's the reality of Indian news. Will anybody has questions? Can we have a mic there, please?
You guys covered everything so beautifully.
Thank you.
Hi, myself is Sanjana. I'm a media student of CU Punjab. So I have some doubts about how propaganda is working. It's based on the specific agenda setting, right? So we have faced some crisis on the Kerala story. And we suffered a lot to spread the real Kerala story, how it's happening in Kerala, what are the developments, what are the educational, what are the health, like that. So when the digital, the people who are old, when we are saying the 60 above, they can't know how to, when the miscommunication or fake news happen or propaganda-based something happen, they don't know how to search the truth. So it's as a facing a difficulty of media also. So how we can prevail the challenges, how we can overcome? Because when the youth comes, we can search in the Google or Google News, something like that. But in my parents also, they are 60 above. They can't. Even I also shared the real things, but they couldn't believe that it's real or not. Even I am facing some like I am not like the Kerala students or Keralites, when they are going pan India, they are asking, is that the real story is about Kerala, like that. So it's difficult to understand what's happening in Kerala. So how we can overcome the challenges which we are facing because of media, propaganda-based media.
I just want to add, even in my own family WhatsApp groups, I would have been there on the ground. I would have I would have reported on that. But the uncles tell me, no, you got it wrong. I saw it on this website, Op India, one of those. That's not how it is.
Yeah, sometimes people said it's a capsules. It's capsules. It's not like, even I'm a media student. That time also when women, so the people didn't
of course.
Believe.
What do we know, right?
Yeah.
But Neha, you want?
I don't have an answer to that, but I just want to say that we all need to understand that propaganda can no longer be dealt with facts. Propaganda has to be dealt with emotions. Yes. And people who have spread propaganda have used emotions. So let us all, whatever we believe, whatever, we have to change ourselves in the way we have those conversations. Let's also talk in an emotional way.
Like, I am a media student, that's why I know it's a propaganda-based
because
film.
Like she's saying, like I was in Sri Lanka and my mother kept asking, so did you see Ravan? Did you see Ravan? And I said, no, it's not possible. And then she said, I said, no, there are some Buddhist theories that he may be Buddhist. Then she said, no, that was Satyuk was 7,000 years back and 2nd century, whatever. So you can't have those conversations. We will also have to use emotions.
Anybody else?
Just
one.
See, this is really an interesting story idea. When she's talking as a student, see, lots of students are going from one place to other place, and all of them are facing similar kind of problems. So if you go from Kerala to somewhere in Rajasthan or in Punjab, you are a thin minority. And then there is a fake news about your community. You are a Kashmiri, you are traveling to Punjab or to Uttar Pradesh. So I think this is something, so these thin minorities, which are mobile, fluid kind of minorities.
Then we are going to Punjab or some central universities, the people asking about how the Kerala students are coming, because they are hijacking our opportunities like that. And you people didn't have any educational institutions in Kerala like that. Then we said it's central university, so that's why we came. It's struggle to understand why we came there, what the educational qualification, like quality we get like that. Even it's same like Kerala institutions also, but we are interested to explore the another states like that. It's difficult. Totally difficult.
I completely understand the issue, but the issue is how to enter the story. So, yeah.
So I wanted to ask about, this might be a flawed idea, but then I have read in places and from people in media about how the ideal journalist should be impartial and neutral. And at times when objective truth is being misrepresented into propaganda, how have you ever faced a very much of a dilemma where you have to take a side on something, but then it'll be seen as, taking a side, essentially?
Taken sides, I think. Everybody on this panel, we are open about what sides we take. But Sagar, you want to take that?
I think I won't say I'm not that courageous to now take sides. I used to take sides. I removed myself on social media because what happens is, the way industry has become is you will start being seen as a certain writer, and as a journalist you want everyone to read your story, more so people on the other side. But whether you like it or not, you are not going to tell each and every person that, look, the copy that has been published has gone through a editorial process. There are fact checkers, there are copy editors, there are lead editors, so it has been filtered out several times. What they will know is that you have certain beliefs, and your beliefs will be seen in association with your works, which I realized like last 2 years, and I stopped doing that, unfortunately. I wish I could take as a strong side as earlier I used to do. Yeah.
I just want to say one thing. There is no objective truth. There is truth and there is lies, right? And also this both sidism is and objectivity is a very corporate media term. Because if somebody has been killed, somebody has been killed. That's the truth. So there is no both sides to it. And it's this full debate model of journalism where this person is saying this and this person is saying that, is where all of this comes in. There is otherwise objectivity. You can't be objective about this. The truth is very much there. So you know what I'm saying.
Do we have more questions?
And if you report it, then they'll call you some activist journalist or some nonsense like that, or you're a lefty or whatever. But yeah.
And feminist as
Thank you for covering such a wide ground of issues and conversations. I have a two-part question, and please forgive my naivete. One is our perception of the impact of mainstream media inflated out of proportion, because majority of Indians still consume news in unorganized, informal ways and processes. So one is that. And in that context, does mainstream media therefore become redundant in local communities, in local contexts? And therefore, is media, like mainstream media, also a fourth pillar of democracy, if democracy in itself is now showing its fallacy in the way that we know majoritarian democracy, because there are much more democratic forms of democracy than majoritarian forms of democracy. So in that context, are we also looking at reimagining what mainstream media should be or could be?
I think we've started redefining the term mainstream, first up. And second thing is, I wouldn't completely write off the impact and influence they have, simply because, for example, the state that I come from, Karnataka, when you have a national channel picking up a story, the Kannada channels also report on it. They may not do it to the same scale, they may not do it in the same style, but they still pick it up. So in that sense, they're still setting the agenda to some extent, although it is very highly misrepresented. But I think internet has had a huge role in ensuring that that is not the only narrative that goes out.
I also, just one part of your question, which is also, the whole thing is about access. So if you have a cable connection, and now most people have it, and it's just coming on your television screens, people are consuming it. One example, I'll give you full disclosure, I'm associated with a film and media collective called Chalchitra Abhiyan in West UP. It looks at 5 districts. So apart from reporting of local people reporting from the area, one thing that they do now for the last 7 years is that they go to 20 villages every week, and they also take the news video or whatever they have done in that week and show them on the projector. And initially 50-60 people used to come. Now 150 to 200 people come every week to watch that news bulletin. So you are actually not depending on the news video reaching people through their WhatsApp, but you're making a community sit together and discuss about a news that is from their area. So that's when you think of public interest, and that may change. But right now, still a lot of people watch local cable television news, so I don't think it's redundant yet. Yeah.
Hello. Just one sentence, maybe. More than the source of media or whatever media you come up with or we devise tomorrow, it's also about monopoly of all these spaces, whether social media, television, or websites or print media. There is one kind of voice which is coming across, and that the challenge is how to reach out to your audience by, in the midst of this monopoly, whichever organization, whether Ambani is owned or Adani owned, but there is still, I think, the challenge is how to, remove this monopoly. Yeah.
We can take one last question, maybe. We'll try and sneak in 2 if we can. Yeah, go.
Hello, I'm from Bangalore. So my question is that now we have moved, like when we consume media, I mean especially news, my generation has been consuming it through social media, through Instagram, through Facebook, and all other sites. And what I've realized now is most of the information is fake. But now we've found out amazing panels like sanitary panel, satire ones like Savla Vada and all that. Now, what are mainstream news channels doing to sort of come into that, to sort of come into social media and spread their information and news through it? Because now, like, especially like satire news is taking over actual news, because from when I have conversations with my friends, all of their what they consume is through satire news or it's through comics. So what is mainstream media doing to, yeah. Sorry, it was very...
I don't know, that's fine. But I don't know if any of us here speak for mainstream media. What they're doing is what they do best. They pump in money, they pump in resources because they can. And they are trying to take over even social media as much as they can. YouTube and Twitter and what have you. But how authentic are they? How much do people still believe them is a question.
But Pooja, I also think that it's only people sitting here are making a distinction between news and journalism and social media content. Most of the people, I'm glad you're saying so, people, if I can talk like an auntie, people your generation are looking at social media, but I come across people who only look at reels and stories now. And so most people do not make a distinction between what is journalism and what is something put out by an influencer. Because a journalist is obviously doing some basic fact checking and an influencer is not doing that fact checking when telling you how to lose your tummy in 10 days basically. So that is a distinction that more and more people are not making, and that is a crisis for us also.
I think she's also saying that how satire has become a new way to make news or give news, and how people are accepting that more than the traditional or conventional media makers.
Especially because what has been happening with all the wars that have been happening, this generation has been taking everything in more of a light way, and they've become desensitized to it. So now when our generation is looking at news, we look at it in a satire form, because that's the only way in our heads we believe that we can consume that information.
Yeah, totally understand that. I live with my colleague and he's totally mesmerized by Samadhish YouTuber, and he does this fun interview. And yeah, I also like that. I don't know how. Maybe someday we'll try satire.
We like that, but we can't do it. I am often asked, why can't you be as funny as witty?
But there is a crisis there where I see that not just our dear Prime Minister, but also political leaders from opposition parties are only talking to influencers now, which means they don't want to answer very serious questions. And that in itself is a crisis for us.
Last question somebody had. Yeah.
Basically, I want to ask about the newsroom itself. Like, for example, there's one reporter who doesn't know English very well, and then lot of times those reporters are kind of sidelined. And as a young journalist, I've seen in many newsrooms, including independent media, that there is some level of favoritism to somewhere. Like everybody has biases, and everybody, nobody's objective, right? So, how do we address these things? For example, there can be in my understanding, there can be different cells in newsrooms, like a gender cell or a caste cell, that they can make informed decisions. But are there any things being implemented? Because I think even in independent media houses, I see this kind of things happening. So.
No, you're right. We've had such cases. In fact, a former colleague of mine, his name is Charan, and he's a fantastic reporter. He found it difficult to write in English, but when his story would come through, we'd have multiple editors who can kind of work with him. There is a certain kind of alignment, and we'd kind of go through it and then send it to the final edit only for language cleanup, but keep it as it is. So you're right about that, but it is being addressed as well. I don't think language is that big a barrier anymore. Of course, I am told that young reporters use a lot of AI now also. That's a whole different conversation. But
I come from Punjabi journalism, and then I join a multilingual organization. But the kind of behavior with the people who write in non-English, non-Hindi languages, it's there. It's like total kind of bullying in the newsroom. So if you are a Punjabi, you are not supposed to or assumed to be an English-speaking person. So you write Punjabi, so you might be speaking Punjabi only. The moment you start pitching your ideas, arguing for the ideas in English, the people feel so offended. And one of the expression the Hindi people used to use for us is the mother language. We used to call it bullshit. No language is mother language. And you can't imagine how Hindi people can get offended if somebody is telling them bullshit. So it's there. So I think this is what, and it's not just in journalism. I have seen it in academics as well. So this is something we need to talk about, and we need to take it head on. So as far as journalism is concerned, it's about facts, it's about details, it's about ideas, it's not about language. The language now, AI is there, and then there are people who are very good copywriters and copy editors. They may not be good journalists.
Maybe I just want to add, because I was one of the reporters who didn't know English, and my mother tongue, Hindi, and I learned English on the job. And so because there are a lot of young journalists, I would say please teach yourself language, English, at least, because it's work-wise it's better, it pays you good, but also information-wise, if you try to look at information, try to find sources of information, you can use this huge database from outside country and British Library, a lot other places. But language does matter. I'm in a long-form journalism. Do not think that only reporting will take you to places. Please read as much as possible, write as much as possible, write good English, and that's very, very important. Now, if you have to just not like stand out as their diversity candidate, or their, somebody who's, who draws sympathy for you, but somebody who has actual skill sets, and you say, I also know language, not just reporting. So please do not fool yourself that it's not important. Read, write, learn English, make it your own mother tongue. English, for me, is the best language, I would say. Yeah.
One last parting comment. In Bangalore, we have the other problem. We get a lot of people who speak good English, but they can't speak Kannada. So I have really not much use for them, because I can't send them to districts. Or even in Bangalore, right? You can't talk to the man on the ground. So that becomes a bit of a challenge too. I think we'll wrap up today's session. Thank you. This was so much fun for me to speak to such a diverse panel, and all of you have been amazing. Thanks for joining us.